All right, looks like we are all in and ready to go for our championship trial. So good afternoon. Welcome to the championship trial of the 2021 National High School Mock Trial Championship. My name is Tim Callgreen, Indiana's Mock Trial State Coordinator and Director of Civic Education at the Indiana Bar Foundation, and the host of the 2021 competition. We are excited to welcome all of you to Evansville, Indiana. Congratulations to all the participants and especially the top two teams. So let's begin.
All rise. The 2021 National High School Mock Trial Competition's championship trial in Evansville, Indiana is now open pursuant to adjournment. All having business before this honorable court draw near, give attention, and you shall be heard. The Honorable Richard Young, Judge of the U.S. District Court of the Southern District of Indiana, is presiding. You may be seated.
Well, I want to welcome the two teams to this championship round, and also the spectators and family members and others who are joining us as well. We are here today in the matter of the state of Indiana versus Smith-Dawson. I'd like to a little housekeeping matters before we begin. I'd like to remind everyone the trial may be recorded, but the recording cannot be shared with others until the national competition has finished. And by that, I mean tomorrow morning, Sunday morning, or later. Teachers, instructors, coaches, and observers are not to talk to, signal, communicate with, or coach their teams during the trial. The only exception is when an adult is assisting in a technical issue. Everyone other than competing team members should always be muted. No observer or coach is permitted to use the chat function other than to address a technical emergency. Chat should be kept clear for the timekeepers to use. Individuals not affiliated with the competing teams, and especially individuals affiliated with some other competing team, are not allowed to be present without permission from the host or from the national board. The audience is not to say or do anything that could identify either of the competing teams. Students will turn their video on and confirm that none of the scoring, and I need to confirm that none of the scoring judges have a conflict judging either team. The scoring judges, you all have your sheets now identifying the participants. Does anyone feel they have a conflict? Very good. At this time, I would like to ask each team to introduce its competing members. We'll start with the prosecution. Both attorneys and witnesses we would like to have introduced.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Harper Denniston, and I'll be representing the state in today's trial, along with my co-counsel, Catherine Gertis.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
And Shoshana Hemley.
Hello, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
Our witnesses in today's trial are Francesca Brown, who will be playing Noah Hitter.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Toby Epstein, who will be playing Jordan Bennett.
Morning, Your Honor.
And Johanna Kopelman, who will be playing NJ Neer.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Our timekeeper in today's trial will be Ananya Albert-Mueller.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
And we'll be assisted in tech by Francesca Brown and Toby Epstein, who were previously introduced.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Dennison. For the defense?
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Lucy Dembski on behalf of the defense. I'll be conducting the direct examination of Captain Smith-Dawson, the cross-examination of Miss Noah Hitter, and I'll also be conducting the opening statements today.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Aiden Connors on behalf of the defense. Today, I'll be conducting the direct examination of Mr. O.B. Good. the cross-examination of Mr. Jordan Bennett, and delivering the closing argument.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Maya Newman-Toker on behalf of the defense, and I will be conducting the direct examination of Portina Storm and the cross-examination of N.J. Neer.
And our witnesses.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Lindsay Reamer, and today I will be playing Portina Storm.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Jocelyn Pickard, and I'll be playing Captain Smith Dawson.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Gabriel Sachs, and I will be playing Obi Good.
And our timekeeper.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Sasha Lifshay, and I will be the timekeeper on behalf of the defense.
With that, Your Honor, the defense is ready to proceed with preliminary matters.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dembski. Are there any pretrial matters that we need to discuss? Ms. Dennison?
Yes, Your Honor. We would like to alert the court that due to technical limitations, we'll be using one computer for attorneys and one computer for witnesses. So we will require a moment to change our name on the Zoom during the round.
Okay, all right. Ms. Dembski, any pretrial matters?
Yes, Your Honor. We'd just like to establish that in this jurisdiction, witnesses are not sequestered.
That is the case.
We'd also like to ask the court's preference. When screen sharing exhibits for identification purposes only, should we assume that it's constructively outside the presence of the jury, or should we go ahead and ask every time?
Just assume that it's outside the presence of the jury.
Yes, Your Honor. With that, the defense is ready to proceed with opening statements.
All right. And we've already confirmed the presence of timekeepers. I remind the timekeepers that 1, they must each keep time for both teams. 2, must post the time remaining after each trial segment in the public chat where all participants can see it. And 3, they must advise me, the presiding judge, if they develop a discrepancy between them of more than 15 seconds that they cannot resolve. Also, I need to remind the timekeepers to notify the court if time expires. I would now like to swear in all the witnesses together. All witnesses who plan to testify in this trial, please raise your right hand. Do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will be faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and the rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
All right, we're ready to begin our trial. This is, as I indicated, the state of Indiana versus Smith Dawson. And we're, Ms. Denniston, are you ready for your opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. Before I proceed, I did have one more pretrial matter. The state would like to reserve any remaining time in closing for rebuttal.
You may.
Thank you. May I proceed with my opening?
You may.
Your Honors, opposing counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, may it please the court. Today, you will hear the story of Smith Dawson, a woman who, with everything on the line, went full speed ahead. Smith Dawson is head of her family-owned shipping business, Nob Hill Barge Company, KHBC for short. KHBC has been in Dawson's family for 3 generations. But KHBC is more than just a family-owned business to Dawson. In fact, she regards all of her employees as her extended family. She provides good wages and benefits and even hosts Sunday night dinners. However, in 2018, KHBC's business was slipping. Dawson was under pressure to keep her family-owned business afloat, and so she decided to make a deal with Dawson Bennett, an investor for White Star Funds. The deal was set to close in September, and in May, Bennett came to do a visit of the company. However, Bennett's investigations uncovered a severely mismanaged business, one that was losing money and was close to hitting the penalty for late deliveries for their Ohio River clients. That penalty would result in a $150,000 fine, far too much money for the struggling shipping company to afford. On May 4th, Dawson set out to do a late night delivery with her number 2, Obi Good. Jordan Bennett also came along for the trip. That night was dark. The water was unusually high, and there was no wake mandate stated for all boaters. However, Smith continued at her usual speed, unconcerned with the amount of debris and pleasure boats in the water. She also used sight and autopilot to navigate, resulting in a dangerous deviation from the course as they passed a sharp turn. Dawson was under pressure to deliver her cargo there on time. Any delay could result in monetary penalties and potentially the loss of her family-owned business. A loss that would not only impact Dawson, but all the employees that she regarded as family. But unfortunately that night, one of those pleasure boats contained Noah Hitter and Jamie Hunter, out for a little late night jug fishing. Shaken by waves, their boat was hit and destroyed, throwing both of them into the water. Noah Hitter survived, but tragically, Jamie Hunter did not. Still, Smith Dawson continued full speed ahead. She ignored the impact and the beer cans in the water, the evidence of the hit. She had too much on the line to stop. The state bears the burden of proof in today's trial. We have charged Smith Dawson on 2 counts. First, reckless homicide, and second, leaving the scene of an accident. The evidence today will establish that Smith Dawson recklessly killed Jamie Hunter and that she failed to stop immediately and as close to the scene of the accident as possible. In order to meet the burden of proof in today's case, the state will call 3 witnesses. First, Noah Hitter, the woman who's on the boat with Jamie Hunter when their boat was struck and destroyed. Noah will testify to her experience that night and what resulted in her boat's crash. Next, you will hear from Jordan Bennett, the investor from White Star Funds. Bennett will testify to the fragility of Dawson's company, KHBC, as well as to dismissal of concerns the night of the accident. And next, you will hear from NJ Neer, the member of the Coast Guard Investigations Unit, who will testify to the dangerous boating conditions that night, Smith's refusal to follow no-wake guidelines, and the evidence of the collision on the towboat. The evidence today will establish that on May 4th, Smith Dawson had a lot on the line. Her struggling shipping company that had been in her family for generations, that she had poured everything into, and that was her responsibility. The one that depended on Jordan Bennett's investment. The one that depended on her already behind schedule shipment getting there on time. Smith Dawson felt this pressure. She ignored the no-wake zone, the impact of the hit and the cans in the water. She recklessly used sight and autopilot to navigate. With everything on the line, she had to get there on time. In Dawson's mind, she had no other option but to continue full speed ahead. And in doing so, she acted recklessly. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, at the conclusion of today's trial, after reviewing all of the evidence, we will ask you to return the only just and proper verdict and find Smith Dawson guilty on all charges. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Denniston. On behalf of defendant Smith Dawson, Ms. Dembski?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
May it please the court, counsel, and members of the jury. Ms. Dennison just told you a story about how Jamie Hunter died. She told you a story about a tragic boat accident. But what she didn't tell you is that not a single witness saw this crash occur. What she didn't tell you is that there was another boat on the river that night, a speedboat. What she didn't tell you is that that speedboat could have been responsible for Mr. Hunter's death. And what the state can't prove is how this accident even happened. Because members of the jury, all the state has are guesses. And guesses just aren't good enough. So let's go back to May 4th of 2019. That day, Captain Smith Dawson was called in as the replacement captain at around 3:30 in the afternoon. Now that day, the river was a little higher than usual. There were some logs and debris in the water, but it was nothing that the captain couldn't handle. Nothing she hadn't seen before. Captain Dawson has been on the river for over 40 years. It's her entire life. Now, that night, everything was going smoothly until that speedboat that I mentioned earlier began going in circles around the defendant's towboat. That speedboat was going faster than any other boat on the river, and as it was doing so, it was creating a giant wake. But abruptly, that speedboat sped away. And right after it did so is when something hit Mr. Hunter's boat, killing him. Members of the jury, what happened to Mr. Hunter is tragic. But today, we're going to show you there's no plausible way Captain Dawson is at fault. Because all the state has is guesses. Now, the state has charged Captain Dawson with reckless homicide and leaving the scene. As the state, they have the burden of proof in today's case to prove each element of reckless homicide and leaving the scene beyond a reasonable doubt. We're confident they won't be able to meet their burden today. To show you why, we're going to call 3 witnesses to the stand. First, we'll call Portina Storm, an expert in boating safety. This Storm will tell you that there are many plausible explanations for what could have happened on the river that night, and that the state's story isn't even the most likely one. Next, we'll call Captain Smith Dawson herself to the stand. She'll tell you that she's been a captain for over 40 years, and that she loves her community and the river, and would never do anything to put anyone at risk. She'll tell you that that night, she hit a log, not a boat. Finally, we'll call O.B. Good, the mechanic, to the stand. Mr. Good will tell you that he was on the boat with Captain Dawson that night, and that from his years of experience on the river, he thought Captain Dawson acted safely. So, members of the jury, throughout today's trial, I want you to consider 3 important things. 1, did Captain Dawson believe she was doing the right thing? 2, is there another plausible story besides the state of what could have happened that night? And 3, did anyone actually see this accident occur? Because members of the jury, at the end of today's trial, you're going to be left with guesses. Guesses just aren't good enough, and they certainly don't prove guilt. Which is why at the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Aiden Connors, is going to come before you and ask that you find Captain Smith Dawson not guilty on all counts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dembski. The state of Indiana, are you ready to begin your case in chief?
Yes, Your Honor. If I may have a moment to simply rename myself on the Zoom screen.
You may. All right, Ms. Hemley, call your first witness.
The state of Indiana calls Noah Hitter to the stand.
All right.
Your Honor, before I proceed, may I ask if it is possible for, while we are doing our direct examination, for you to stay muted so that we don't hear any audio feedback?
You may.
Thank you. May I proceed?
You may.
Please state your name for the court, spelling the last.
Noah Hitter, Hitter.
Can you tell the court a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a Hoosier born and raised. I am 27 years old, and I would describe myself as a baseball junkie. I grew up playing the game in a sandlot in the port, where I learned to strike out the boys with a pitch I mastered called the knuckleball.
How has baseball impacted your life?
Well, After I graduated from LaPorte High School, I was fortunate enough to attend the University of Evansville on a combination academic and baseball scholarship. After I graduated, I got a front office job with the Evansville River Rats. I am now their marketing manager.
What's it like working for the River Rats?
Oh, it is a hoot, let me tell ya. I mean, a bench warmer on the New York Yankees probably makes more than our entire payroll combined, but we have learned to make do. During the seasons, our teammates and staff are hosted by family members in the community because we can't afford fancy hotels and all that. I was recently placed with Smith Dawson's family, but now I want nothing to do with her.
How come?
Well, I learned that she was involved with the death of my dear friend, Catfish.
Can you tell the court about who Catfish was?
Well, Catfish's real name was Jamie Hunter. He was a pitcher on the team, and we was about the same age. We got on real well, the two of us. I mean, after each game, Catfish was the last guy to leave the field. Bless his heart.
How did he pass away?
Well, we was out jug fishing together on May 4th of 2019. He died in a boating accident we was in that day.
Objection. Speculation.
Overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm so sorry for your loss, Miss Hitter. If it's not too much trouble, can you walk us through that day starting at the beginning?
Well, earlier on in the day, we met up with some of the teammates at a local sports bar, and that's when Catfish invited me to go jug fishing with him on his boat later that day. So we went on to film a promotional video for the team down at the World War II landing ship tank here on the riverfront in Evansville. After we was finished filming, we had some pizza, and then Catfish and I set out on his boat.
May I have the court's permission to share what has been previously marked as Exhibit 12 on my screen?
You may.
Let the record reflect I am now sharing Exhibit 12. Miss Hitter, what is this?
Well, this is a picture of the same kind of boat that Catfish had.
I now move to admit Exhibit 12 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
12 admitted.
Now, can you please describe this boat?
Well, this boat had just enough room to sit, fish, and drink. It didn't have any of the fancy electronic equipment, but it did have the necessary lights and a motor. Catfish had bought this boat the year before with his year-end bonus. We found this picture when we were cleaning out his locker. He always wanted to rename it the River Otter.
Let the record reflect I am no longer sharing Exhibit 12 on my screen. Now, what did you do on the river that day?
Well, around 6:45 p.m. is when we cast off. Catfish wanted to check some of the jugs he had put in earlier that day. When I got on board, Catfish handed me a beer, but after that, I switched to water. Catfish probably had 2 to 4 more beers before the sun went down.
What happened once the sun set?
Well, some of the jugs had drifted a bit, so we went a little further out past one of them red buoys to get them. I mean, they was tangled up in a gnarly group of sticks. When we were coming back, that's when we saw a towboat just upriver from us, pushing barges.
Can you describe this towboat?
Well, this towboat, it was not floating lazily down the river like others we had seen earlier that day. It was moving with some real speed. I remember it had some mountain thing as its logo.
How come you noticed this particular speedboat?
Well, I noticed this towboat because it was getting real close to us. It was making me nervous. It didn't seem to notice us, change course, or slow down at all. I mean, it looked like it was going full speed ahead.
What happened next?
Well, you see, when we was on the river that day, the shore was on one side of us and we had the buoys on the other side of us. Now, from my observations that day, all the pleasure craft was staying in our area closer to the shore, and all the larger vessels were staying away from the shore. So I was shocked to see the barges coming in on our side of the buoys. getting so close to us, and it just made me real nervous. So I hollered to Catfish to get the motor started, but it was being mighty faithful. I tossed him a life jacket and I put one on myself, and the barges, they somehow missed us, but it looked like the towboat was going to slide right into us.
Were you able to get away?
No, some speedboat started speeding towards us. It turned right before it hit us, but its wake left our boat rocking unsteadily. As I was trying to steady myself, I look up and I see the barges now just passing a few feet from us. Then something hit our boat that caused it to disintegrate. The whole world was flipping until it went pitch black as I hit the water.
What happened then?
Well, after a struggle, I was able to pop my head up for air, and I looked around, but I couldn't see Catfish anywhere. I grabbed a floating seat cushion that was nearby, and I rested.
How were you able to get to safety?
Well, I suppose I was knocked unconscious, because the next thing I know, I'm laying on my back on the boat ramp, looking up at one of them EMTs. They took me to the hospital, and after no x-rays showed signs of broken bones, they sent me home.
Where was Catfish?
Well, that's just the thing. When I was at the hospital, there was a detective questioning me, but no one would answer my question as to where Catfish was. I was heartbroken to hear the next day that Catfish didn't make it.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Hemley. Cross-examination, Ms. Dembski?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon, Ms. Hitter. Now, I want to start by talking about your experience on the boat that night. Now, your pleasure boat wasn't even supposed to be out past dark, was it?
Well, I mean, we had read a sign suggesting that pleasure boats shouldn't be out after dark, but I don't think this is like a required rule written anywhere, at least from my impression.
Right. It was suggested that pleasure boaters shouldn't be out past dark. Excuse me, recommended.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. It was recommended because your boat is really small, isn't it?
It was a small boat, but it did the job.
You would go so far to say that your boat isn't even a real boat. That's how small.
I would say that boat is a generous term. I mean, she's a small little thing.
Right. She doesn't, excuse me, your boat doesn't have any autopilot system.
Oh, no, Catfish's boat didn't have no autopilot system, but it did have the necessary lights and the motor.
Right. It only had the necessary lights, nothing more.
Yeah, it had all the necessary stuff, ma'am.
And that night, the river was a little high, wasn't it?
It was, ma'am.
There were logs and debris out, weren't there?
That is correct.
Now, those logs, they posed a problem for your boat, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, they kept getting tangled up in the jugs. It was a gnarly situation.
I'm not actually talking about the jugs. I'm talking about your boat. Because those logs would crash into your boat and scare you. Isn't that right?
Yeah, they would do that from time to time. And I mean, it scared the daylights out of me, but Catfish wasn't fazed by it.
Right, those logs that scared the daylights out of you, they weren't propelled by anything, were they?
Well, I mean, just the river.
Right, just the river. Now, that night, if it were up to you, you wouldn't have even gone out.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't as experienced as Catfish, so water makes me nervous in the first place.
So if it were up to you, you would have gone back. You wouldn't have stayed out on the river.
Oh, yeah, if it was up to me, I don't have the experience.
Now, that night, your boat, it actually crossed those buoys, just like you told us on direct examination, right?
Yeah, we crossed them to get some of the jugs, but we came right back.
So just to be clear, Miss Hitter, there was a period of time where you weren't where you were supposed to be on the river. Isn't that right?
Yes, ma'am, but like I said, we came right on back.
All right, Miss Hitter. I want to talk about that speedboat. That night, that speedboat was going faster than any other boat on the river, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was racing around like it owned the place.
Right, you actually thought it was going to hit you.
At one point, I did.
Right, and right as it was about to hit you, it abruptly turned away.
Yeah, I mean, thank goodness.
Right, and right as it did so, it created a giant wave. didn't it?
Yeah, it left a wake that was rocking our boat.
Yeah, you actually thought your boat was going to capsize. That's how much it was shaking.
I thought I might be thrown overboard.
You thought your boat was going to capsize. That's how much you were shaking.
Yeah, I was worried we might be thrown overboard.
And right after that happened is when something hit your boat. Isn't that right?
Yes, ma'am, that is when something hit our boat that caused it to disintegrate.
Miss Hitter, you don't actually know what hit your boat, do you?
I mean, I suppose what you're saying is I didn't see exactly what hit our boat. Like, I didn't see it hit our boat, but I can assure you the last thing I saw before I hit the water was them barges.
Miss Hitter, I'm talking about what you saw that night. And you never saw anything hit your boat. Isn't that right?
I did not see what hit our boat, ma'am. The last thing I saw was them barges.
There were lots of logs in the water around you still.
That's correct, ma'am.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Ms. Hemley, any redirect examination?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Hitter, thank you very much for your testimony. State, please call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor, if I could just request a moment to rename.
Yes, you may.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Please state your name for the court, spelling the last.
Jordan Bennett, Bennett.
Tell the court a bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a self-made man. Grew up in Queens, New York, poor as can be. Got through the boards of high school, college as quick as I could, and I sped right off to Wall Street. All right, a lot of people think once you're on the street, you're set. You got to keep working hard to keep your head above water. You know, I sold short, long, up, down, and gosh darn circles until I was on top. You know, figured once I had a good reputation as a floor trader, I'd set up my own shop.
Can you expand on your company?
White Star Funds. Are you rich? Give us your money. Are you poor? Even better. Give us your money. We're the gleaming white star that leads hungry Americans to wealth. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to take your money and invest it in slightly more risky businesses than your average scared moronic Charles Schwab family broker would ever dream of. Do we lose sometimes? Of course, all right. But when we win big, and so do our investors.
How did you discover an uphill barge company and what drew you to invest?
Yeah, I was on a private jet flight when suddenly, we got a touchdown in nowhere Midwest to fix the brakes or something. Anyway, I go into town, you know, go straight down to the river. First thing I notice is the barge traffic, all right? Every ship passing by, it's got a great big mountain logo with KHBC emblazoned on the side. You know, the shipping industry was an undervalued opportunity I wanted to get in on, all right? You know, KHBC had a great market share of the region. They had diverse shipments, yada, yada. I could tell they'd make a great investment.
Your Honor, may I have permission to share my screen to show what has been marked as Exhibit 13?
You may.
I could just have one moment. I apologize, Your Honor, we're having some technical difficulties.
Okay.
There we go. That's
All
what I
right,
like.
let the record reflect I am showing what has been marked as Exhibit 13 on my screen. Mr. Bennett, please identify this document for the court.
Yeah, this is the contract that I signed with Smith Dawson at KHBC.
And it is a fair and accurate copy?
Yeah.
Your Honor, I now move to admit Exhibit 13 into evidence.
Objection.
Yes.
Hearsay.
Hearsay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Short admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Bennett, I'd like to draw your attention to Section 6 of this document. Can you please describe more in detail what your investment entailed?
Yeah, so basically the contract allowed White Star Funds to start pumping in money in exchange for a minority stake, all right? It also allows us to purchase more stake in the future as well as buying the company outright. In Section 6 here, you can see it outlines a kind of an insurance policy for White Star Funds if Smith Dawson were to experience any financial penalties or shipping delays, he would lose control of the company.
Thank you. Let the record reflect I'm no longer showing Exhibit 13 on my screen. Mr. Bennett, what did you do once your purchase was finalized?
Well, I decided to take a trip down to Evansville in May to review the company's financials and operations, but sad to say they were not pretty. I mean, I'm talking everything was still done in handwriting. I could barely read the cursive, all right? I wanted to know where they were on aggregate number of late deliveries, and they had no idea, okay? I started hand tally. I'm counting 1, 2. I'm counting 9 times late in the last 78 days on Ohio River shipments.
Why is that important?
You see, they had penalties on their contracts if they were late more than 10 times in a 90-day period. And it applied retroactively onto all the contracts on which they've been late. They stood to lose high 5 figures if they were late even twice more in the next 2 weeks. And they didn't even know it.
Was anyone responsive to your concerns?
Yeah, this Smith blew me off. There didn't seem much Obi could do about it. I mean, they didn't seem to realize White Star could take control of the company for this. That Smith would lose the family business. I mean, in my opinion, it was looking like they hadn't even read the contract. Instead of sitting down to iron out the issues, Smith suggested we go to the Petroleum Club for lunch.
What happened then?
Yeah, around 3 o'clock, Smith gets like a text message. He comes back 10, 15 minutes later looking especially grumpy. Turns out one of his captains called in sick and he was going to have to go and fill in. I figured I'd tag along, all right? I invested in a boating company. I expected to be on a KHBC boat at some point. So, I brought what I saw those guys wearing, like boat shoes, Nantucket red pants, a shirt from Vineyard Vines, whole 9 yards.
What happened once you arrived at the boat that night?
Well, it was a pretty nice day out, Smith looked a little nervous, so I didn't bring up the whole contract shabacle in case, I made him a little too nervous. All right. There was a lot of stuff in the water, debris. Water was a little higher than usual, but, I felt pretty safe. All right. Smith, he's a skilled and respected captain. All right. It's why I didn't really think much of it when he, leaves the wheelhouse sometimes. I mean, that's what Autopilot's for, I guess. Right.
Mr. Bennett, please go into more detail of what you experienced that night.
Sure. Well, Smith, he was going along. I spotted some slow no wake signs. We were going around this really tight curve at one point. All these alarms start going off, like when you're trying to switch lanes in your car without signaling first. I have an Audi, so it does it to me all the time. Anyway, we're going around this corner, right? And all these alarms are going off and Smith just flicks them off, he just keeps going. I mean, we were so close to the shore on this turn. I could have sworn I could have high-fived somebody on the dock.
What happened next?
Well, that was about the time I heard a thud. I mean, we definitely hit something, all right? I don't really know. Smith didn't seem to really notice. He didn't slow down or anything. He just kept going, full speed ahead, I asked him about it. Didn't get much of a response.
Were you worried about the hit?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I was worried about, damages to the boat or something, scratches. I mean, it's practically a White Star asset. That's about the time that I saw the beer cans floating behind the boat, though. That suggested to me maybe people were involved.
Objection. Speculation.
Rephrase your question, please.
Yes, Your Honor. What was Smith's reaction to the hit?
Smith, he didn't really seem too concerned at all, I mean, he gave Obi the dirtiest look I've ever seen for even suggesting we slow down and take a closer look.
And what happened once you arrived back on shore?
Well, we were instantly apprehended by a group of police officers. Not the welcoming party I think anybody was looking for. Look, that's where I discovered that somebody, some local baseball player had been killed. I was furious. I mean, not only were we sure to get sued for it, but the shipment was sure to be late, which means we're going to get all the penalties as well. I mean, talk about a double whammy. Look, it's a terrible thing what happened, all right? Smith no longer deserves control of the company for it. I'm breaking up the KHBC in the next.
Objection. Improper opinion as to Captain Dawson no longer deserves control of the company.
All right. Sustained.
Thank you. Move to strike that portion of the witness's testimony.
Stricken.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Bennett, please continue with the aftermath of the accident.
Well, I can tell you, I wasn't too happy with the results.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-exam, Ms. Connors.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Bennett.
Good afternoon.
You're a guy that likes money, right?
Of course. You got me. You got me pinned down on that one.
Quicker you can get it, the better.
Well, I'm in it for the long game, okay, but sure, maybe a little bit.
Right. In fact, you've got a plan in place for if KHBC doesn't do too well.
That's right. That's the long game, all right? If the mom and pop shop business doesn't really work out, I've got an insurance policy for myself. I'm going to sell off the assets of the company, as specified in the contract. I can take control if Smith makes any mistakes. So, yeah.
Right. Your plan is to break up the company and sell it in parts.
Well, if Smith were to mess up, yes, that's correct. And he kind of did.
So if Captain Dawson messes up, you sell those boats and barges to someone you've already got lined up.
That's correct. I had it all set up. I'm a future thinker. I'm making plans. I always got to make profit on these deals, all right?
If Captain Dawson messes up, you hand those docks and contracts over to a barge company you've already got lined up.
That's correct.
All that happens quicker and you get more money if Captain Dawson is convicted.
Well, the shipment was it was already late, right? Which means he got all those penalties, which means regardless, I think I'm going to try and take control of the company no matter what.
But Mr. Bennett, your plan is to do all that and make all that money if Captain Dawson is convicted.
Sure, yeah.
Now, I want to move on and I want to talk about some things that happened on the river that night. You're a New York City guy, right?
That's correct. Queens.
Right. You like a fast-paced life.
Sure.
When you're out on the Ohio River that day, you saw a speedboat moving pretty quickly.
That's right. Those guys were looking like they were having fun. Maybe a little too much fun.
Right. That speedboat was moving so quickly, you wish you were on that instead of your slow-moving barge.
That's correct. They kind of fit the outfit I was wearing that day a little better.
I actually wanted to talk about something about that outfit, Mr. Bennett. May 4th was your first time on a working boat, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Only been on those nice yachts before that. I got the rich friends, so.
Right. The last time you were on a boat was a yacht in Nantucket.
Correct.
When you were on that yacht in Nantucket, you never hit a log.
Well, no.
When you're on that yacht in Nantucket, you never hit another boat.
Nope.
You don't know what either of those things feels like.
No, but I know that I heard a thud and we definitely hit something, all right? I can tell you that much.
I wasn't asking about that specific moment, just that you don't know what hitting a log or another boat feels like.
No, but I can tell you I know what hitting something feels like. The dock or a person or a boat. I can kind of guess.
May 4th at the Oxbow, it was dark out. The sun was down.
Sure was.
You were up in the wheelhouse with Captain Dawson.
Correct.
When you were up in the wheelhouse with Captain Dawson, you felt something hit you.
Correct.
You never felt anything like that before.
I guess not really.
That's a yes?
Yeah, sure.
And you never saw what it actually was?
No, ma'am.
So you can't be sure what you actually hit.
I can be sure that we hit something. I cannot be sure what we hit.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Connors. Ms. Dennison, any redirect exam?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Bennett, thank you very much for your testimony. State of Indiana, please call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state calls Dr. N.J. Neer to the stand. If I could just have a moment to adjust my name.
You may. All right, Ms. Gerdes, direct exam.
May I proceed?
You may.
State your name for the court, spelling your last.
Dr. N.J. Neer, N-E-E-R.
Dr. Neer, I'd first like to discuss your career and experience. What's your current occupation?
I'm the director of the Louisville, Kentucky Regional Office of the Coast Guard Investigative Service, or CGIS Riverwatch. Effectively, I'm the Chief Police and Safety Officer on the Ohio River from Owensboro to Cairo. I know every bend and slough on that part of the river, and I do my best to prevent any foul play on my waterway.
What's your educational background?
I graduated from the Coast Guard Academy with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I later went on to receive a master's in engineering from the University of Southern Indiana. I also have a doctorate in safety of industrial engineering from Purdue University.
Do you have any professional experience in Coast Guard investigations?
I received a Coast Guard commission after graduating. I served out my 5-year commitment as an ensign and lieutenant. After my honorable discharge in 2000, I served as a special agent for a decade. Then, over a few years, I worked up to being the director of the regional office.
Dr. Neer, what exactly does the Coast Guard Riverwatch do?
Short answer is we watch the river. On the surface, rivers seem calm, but rivers can be a cruel mistress. Under the surface, danger is lurking. At flood stage, there's debris, and on a nice day, the barge and pleasure boat traffic. If these conditions get dangerous enough, we send out warnings to all the captains registered in our system.
I'd now like to discuss some of the details about the day Jamie Hunter died. What was the Ohio River like on May 4th, 2019?
Early in the day, I received several messages about dangerous flood levels and a large number of pleasure boats in the Evansville area.
Your Honor, may I have the court's permission to show what has previously been identified as Exhibit 2 on my screen?
You may.
Let the record reflect I am now sharing this on my screen for the witness to view. Dr. Neer, could you identify this?
This is a map of the Evansville area.
Your Honor, the prosecution moves to admit Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
2 admitted.
I now request that this exhibit be published to the jury.
Show it published.
Dr. Neer, what did you do in response to those river conditions?
At 1500 hours, I issued a no-wake zone. My staff put up markers starting in the Newburgh Dam area, continuing downriver through Evansville, and then ending a little past Mount Vernon.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I am no longer sharing Exhibit 2 on my screen. Why was it important that boats not create a wake on May 4th?
Wakes can overturn smaller vessels. With all the pleasure boats out on May 4th, wakes could cause some serious harm. As I like to say, lives are at stake when there is a wake.
Earlier, you mentioned putting up signs to show the no-wake zone. Did you use any other strategies to notify boaters?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, may I have the court's permission to show what has previously been identified as Exhibit 9 on my screen?
You may.
Let the record reflect I'm now sharing this on my screen for the witness to view. Dr. Neer, could you identify this?
This is a notice of the slow no wake zone, our automated system sent out to all members of the Ohio River and Evansville commercial groups on May 4th, 2019.
The prosecution moves to admit Exhibit 9 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
9 admitted.
I now request that this exhibit be published to the jury.
We'll show it published.
Dr. Neer, when was this notice sent out?
At 1538 hours.
And what information is included in the notice?
It includes information about high water restrictions and what a slow no wake zone means.
Let the record reflect I'm no longer sharing Exhibit 9 on my screen. Dr. Neer, what happened after this notice was sent out?
Shortly after we sent out the notice, I received a call from Smith Dawson.
Could you tell the court who Smith Dawson is?
She's the owner of the Nob Hill Barge Company, and she captained the MV Susan K. Roberts on the night of May 4th, 2019.
What did the defendant say on your phone call with her?
Well, she seemed very upset about the no-wake zone. She said she didn't have to have a waiver, but it would really help because she had an important shipment.
Objection. Characterization of Captain Dawson as very upset about the waiver.
All right. Rephrase your question, please.
Move to strike the latter portion of the witness's testimony.
We'll show it stricken.
Dr. Neer, what did the defendant say on your phone call about the notice?
She said she didn't have to have a waiver, but it would really help because she had an important shipment. But the Evansville bend is dangerous. I obviously didn't offer any waiver because I don't waiver on safety. I thought that was the end of it, but I guess I was wrong.
Why do you guess you were wrong?
At around 2145 hours that night, I received a text from the Evansville PD about the Jamie Hunter fatality.
What did you do after receiving this text?
I immediately made my way to Evansville and began my investigation.
Dr. Neer, I'd like to discuss the information you reviewed during this investigation. What work helped you come to an opinion on today's case?
Well, that night I conducted interviews with Smith Dawson, Obie Good, and Jordan Bennett. I also went over the company's paperwork and logs, reviewed data from the Roberts electronic charting system, and pulled the logs from the River Watch's automated vessel reporting point. Finally, I did a physical inspection of the ship.
Let's start with your interview of the defendant. Did anything in this interview stand out to you?
I found it unusual that Ms. Dawson failed to mention our earlier phone call about asking for the no-wake zone waiver. It was strange she didn't mention it.
Did the defendant mention anything about the river conditions that night?
She reported not being concerned about the high water levels. However, in my experience, things often go awry when the water is high. She also reported viewing the no-wake zone restrictions as excessive.
I'd like to move on to the next step in your investigation. What did you learn from the Nob Hill Barge Company's paperwork and logs?
I found that no USCG River Watch vessel safety check was completed that night. Though it's not required for every trip, I've never known a KHBC captain to not have completed it.
Let's now discuss your review of the Roberts' online records. What did you learn from the ship's online charting system?
Though everything was in working order, the Roberts was slightly off from the charted scheduled path. It was closer to the Evansville shore than is recommended. It may not make a dramatic difference for the Roberts, but it's concerning for the pleasure boaters and fishermen that stay close to the shore.
I understand you did a physical inspection of the ship next. Did this reveal anything?
Everything was up to code, but not much more than that. The Roberts didn't have foremast or rear spotlight sweeping the water. They're not required, but they greatly help with boater traffic. Their propellers also hadn't been updated. What was most worrying, though, was the autopilot.
Why was the ship's autopilot worrying?
Well, most autopilots adjust over time, but Miss Dawson had her autopilot set to normal. The conditions on May 4th were anything but normal. This could lead to the Roberts getting far out of ideal position.
Earlier, you mentioned the Roberts was off its scheduled path according to the ship's online charting system. What could the Roberts being out of ideal position lead to?
Getting far out of ideal position could require taking certain measures to get back on course. As I always say, you should be in charge when steering your barge. Getting far out of ideal position could require the Roberts to take a more extreme angle or even fight the current to get back on track.
What are the consequences of taking a more extreme angle or fighting the current?
The Roberts would have to accelerate at a higher speed. Because Miss Dawson already needed to accelerate to keep control on the Evansville bend, this means going even faster to maintain that control. This would generate a wake and give everyone less time to adjust for certain circumstances.
Aside from its position and autopilot, did anything else during your physical inspection of the ship stand out to you?
Yes, I noticed on the right side of the Roberts there was paint rubbed off from a watercraft. It was likely that the Roberts would have to hit another boat to cause this damage because it was a pretty hard scrape. The color appeared similar to the decedent's boat, and there was no mention of any damage in any of the KHBC's previous records.
Dr. Neer, after completing your work, what conclusion did you come to in today's case?
While captaining the MV Susan K. Roberts, Smith Dawson continued full speed ahead and caused Jamie Hunter's boat to capsize.
Objection, improper form of an expert opinion.
All right. Overruled.
Thank you.
May I re-ask my question, Your Honor?
You may.
Dr. Neer, after completing your work, what conclusion did you come to in today's case?
While captaining the MV Susan K. Roberts, Smith Dawson continued full speed ahead and caused Jamie Hunter's boat to capsize.
Based on your investigation, do you believe that the defendant conducted herself in a plain, conscious, and unjustifiable disregard of harm on May 4th?
Objection. Opinion on the ultimate issue.
All right, sustain.
Dr. Neer, in your opinion, do you believe that the defendant deviated from acceptable standards of conduct on May 4th, 2019?
Yes, she did.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Cross-examination, Ms. Newman-Toker.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Dr. Neer.
Good afternoon.
You just spoke about acceptable standards of care.
Yes, I did.
You've never been on a river barge before, have you?
No, however, I'm a member of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, so I get a good amount of boat time.
You're not a ship captain?
No, however, I am an expert in nautical safety.
Dr. Neer, you don't have a captaining license.
No, however, I do not need one as I am an expert in nautical safety.
You testified that the Roberts was going full speed ahead, right?
Yes.
You can't tell the court today what speed that was, can you?
No.
You can't tell the court today whether the Roberts was going faster than it needed to maintain control.
If it had its autopilot adjusted to normal and it got off its required course, it would have to accelerate to maintain control.
That was a hypothetical that you talked about on your direct?
Yes, a hypothetical.
You don't know if that actually happened?
No, however, it is very likely that it could have occurred.
It's a possibility, right?
A very likely possibility, yes.
When you say it's a very likely possibility, you have no evidence of that ever occurring.
Not with certainty.
You also don't have certainty that the paint on the Roberts matched that of the small fishing boat, right?
No, however, I did find it odd that the color did match the decedent's boat, and there was no previous record of damage in any of the KHBC's records.
So that's a yes to my question. You couldn't match that paint with any scientific certainty?
No, however, it is a very odd coincidence.
Dr. Neer, I now want to talk about your investigation. In 2015, you had a bad experience with an investigation, right?
I would not call it a pleasant one.
You misplaced critical evidence, right?
Yes, I did, and I can absolutely assure you I would never let that happen again.
It caused substantial public controversy?
Yes, it did.
And on the advice of a mentor, you stepped away from investigations.
I still do some investigations, however, fewer, and I remain fully qualified.
Well, in this case, you conducted interviews, right?
Yes.
It's best practice to write up those interviews the same day or the very next day, right?
That's best practice. However, sometimes things take precedent when you're managing a river. Rivers can be extremely dangerous.
So you didn't write up those interviews the next day, did you?
No, I did not.
You wrote them up almost a week later.
Yes, I did.
Now, in those interviews, you noticed something concerning, didn't you?
Yes.
Mention of a speedboat.
Yes, I did note the mention of a speedboat.
Now, you didn't follow up on that speedboat, did you?
No, I did not feel it was necessary.
You said wakes are unsafe on the river, right?
Yes, they can be, yes.
You know from testimony you heard in court today that that speedboat was producing a large wake.
Yes, however, a large boat such as a barge or a towboat would create a much larger wake.
A boat that's moving quickly can produce as much of a wake as a large boat that's going slowly, right?
Yes, however, if that large boat was going more fast, it would create a much larger wake.
But you don't know, as we established earlier, how fast the Roberts was going.
No, however, I do believe it was likely that the Roberts was going faster than it should have been.
You said it's likely?
Likely, yes.
That's not to a reasonable degree of professional certainty, is it?
Not certainty, no.
So, Dr. Neer, when you came to your expert opinion that the Roberts was the cause of Jamie Hunter's death, you didn't take into account that there was a third boat in the area, did you?
No, I believe there was enough evidence incriminating the Roberts.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Gerdes, any redirect examination?
Yes, Your Honor. It'll be brief.
All
May
right.
I proceed?
You may.
Dr. Neer, based on your investigation, what did you conclude about the Roberts' speed on the Ohio River that night?
I believe that the Roberts was going faster than it should have been, especially because it had its autopilot set to normal. But as I said, the conditions on May 4th were anything but normal. The Roberts would have likely generated a very large wake.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Newman-Toker, any recross-examination?
Yes. When you say the Roberts likely created a large wake, you aren't saying that with professional certainty, are you?
I'm saying it's the most likely outcome.
To answer my question, that's not with a reasonable degree of scientific or professional certainty, is it?
Not certainty.
Thank you. No further questions.
Ms. Gerdes, anything else for this witness?
No, Your Honor. The prosecution
All right.
rests.
All right. Thank you for your testimony, Dr. Neer.
The defense is ready to proceed with its case in chief when you are, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Newman-Toker, please call your first witness.
At this time, we'd call Ms. Portina Storm to the stand. May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon, Ms. Storm.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Could you please state your name and occupation for the court?
Of course. My name is Portina Storm, and I'm the founder, president, and a consultant at Pacific Trident Global Incorporated.
What is that firm?
Well, we're an international boating consulting firm, and we have expertise in ocean, canal, and river shipping.
How long have you been in that position?
Since I founded the company in 2007.
And was that your first experience in the maritime industry?
No, so I actually grew up in Napoli, Italia, and that area is a big hotspot for shipbuilding and shipping in general. And my father was in the Italian Navy, so I followed in his footsteps and was in the Italian Navy for about 10 years.
Did you do anything else related to maritime industry after that?
Yes, so I moved to the United States after being in the Italian Navy, and I took some graduate classes at Texas A&M University, at which I qualified to get my United States Coast Guard Master's 100-ton license.
What's required to get that particular license?
Well, you need a lot of knowledge and experience when it comes to boating and many, many hours on the water.
Does anyone else in today's case hold that same license?
Yes, Captain Smith Dawson also holds that license.
So I actually want to pivot to the evening of May 4th, 2019. What did you review about that night before coming to court today?
Well, of course, I reviewed all of the witness statements. That includes the eyewitness testimony, the other expert witness statement, and of course, the defendant's statement. In addition to that, I reviewed all of the exhibits and reports having to do with the night of May 4th, 2019. And I also performed an inspection of the MV Susan K. Roberts, which was the towboat involved, as well as the Oxbow Turn on the Ohio River in Evansville, Indiana.
May I have permission to share my screen to show this witness an exhibit?
You may.
Thank you. Ms. Storm, do you recognize this document?
I apologize. It's taking a moment to load. Oh, yes.
My apologies. Could you explain to the court what this document is?
Of course. So this is an image taken from the Nob Hill Barge Company website of the MV Susan K. Roberts in action pushing barges.
At this time, Your Honor, we'd move to publish Exhibit 3 to the jury and move it into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
3 admitted.
I'm now showing you a pre-admitted exhibit, Exhibit 12. Do you recognize this document?
I do.
On this enlarged copy, could you tell us a bit about the fishing boat pictured here?
Of course. So this fishing boat is the model, the Sun Dolphin, which was the fishing boat owned by Mr. Jamie, or as he was known by his friends, Catfish Hunter.
Was this boat out on the Ohio River on May 4th?
It was. Mr. Hunter had taken his friend out to go jug fishing around the Oxbow Turn, but they had stayed out past dark, past the time they were supposed to come in.
And was the MV Susan K. Roberts, the towboat, also out on the river that night?
It was. So Captain Smith Dawson was making a shipment with the MV Susan K.
How was she captaining her ship?
Well, for the first portion of the trip, conditions were manageable, so she used Autopilot to help her navigate.
Was she still using Autopilot when she neared the Oxbow Turn?
No, actually, as I normally recommend to my clients, she had turned Autopilot off around the Oxbow Turn so she could have better steerage handle on the big ship around the very tight turn.
So around the time of the incident, where was the fishing boat?
Well, we know the fishing boat was in or around the commercial channel.
Do we know if the barges being pushed by the towboat hit into the small fishing boat?
From witness testimony, we know that the barges did not come in contact with the small fishing boat on the night of May 4th, 2019.
So how about the towboat itself? Did that hit into the small fishing boat?
Well, unfortunately, the eyewitness, Noah Hitter, does not have a clear recollection of what exactly caused the small fishing boat to overturn that night. But there are many possibilities of what could have happened.
So I'd like to walk through some of those possibilities with you. What could overturn a small boat the size of the Sun Dolphin?
Well, when we're talking about a boat the size of the Sun Dolphin, there are actually many things that could overturn it. So we can categorize these things into two pretty general categories. One is currents or wakes. That's just the water being able to push over the small boat, or physical objects running into the boat.
Let's start by talking about currents and wakes. What sort of current or wake would it take to flip over a boat like the Sun Dolphin?
Well, a lot of currents made by high water would be strong enough to flip over the Sun Dolphin, as well as a wake created by a large boat in the area or a boat of any size going at a fast speed in the area.
Now, you mentioned a second class, objects. What sorts of objects could overturn a small boat?
So we can also categorize these objects into two different subcategories, if you will. So the first is other boats in the area. So we know that that there was a speedboat going very fast at the time that likely could have hit into the small fishing boat. We also know the MV Susan K. Roberts was present, and of course, any other boat in the area could have run into the small fishing boat. Now, secondly, we're talking about debris and logs. Now, a log could be strong enough to knock over the fishing boat if it was either pushed by a current, pushed by a wake of another boat, or if it had been pushed off of another boat and then hit into the small fishing boat.
So I know you mentioned a lot of possibilities. Are any of these plausible explanations for the events on May 4th, 2019?
Yes, they all are plausible, and they all were present that night.
So what happened after Jamie Hunter's boat overturned?
Well, after the boat overturned, Noah Hitter lost consciousness, but thankfully survived the incident. Unfortunately, Mr. Hunter, who was not wearing a life jacket at the time, did not survive.
Did you formulate an expert opinion in today's case as to Captain Dawson's conduct specifically?
I did.
And what was the basis for that opinion?
Well, the basis was, of course, all of the exhibits and reports I reviewed, the witness statements that I've studied, and my own inspection of the area on the Ohio River that the incident took place in, and the MV Susan K. Roberts. And of course, on top of that, my years of knowledge and training and experience in boating and shipping in general, and my 10 years in the Italian Navy.
To a reasonable degree of professional and maritime certainty, what is your expert opinion in this case?
Well, my opinion is twofold. Firstly, that Captain Dawson acted completely within the standards of conduct and care for a captain on the night of May 4th, 2019. And secondly, although this was a tragic incident, Captain Dawson is not responsible.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Cross-examination, Ms. Curtis?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Hello, Ms. Storm. My name is Catherine Gertis, and I'll be asking you some questions today. Now, I'd first like to discuss your experience captaining. During your time with GBP Shipping, you were involved in an incident.
I was.
A ship you were captaining ran aground on an underwater sandbar.
Exactly. And of course, it was my responsibility, although that sandbar didn't show up on my charts, since the shifting conditions were very prevalent that day, it was my responsibility to know that that sandbar would have been there. So I took full responsibility.
It was a responsibility, and because you weren't being aware of the shifting water conditions, thousands of tons of cargo spilled into the river.
Yes.
Not only that, but during your investigation, you also got in trouble for misleading investigators.
Yes. So unfortunately, what had happened, I wanted to own up to everything I had done, and my boss asked me to lie, something about insurance or something. And of course, I was uncomfortable, and I told him that, and I told him I would tell the truth. So unfortunately, he lied about me, and the investigators believed him.
And so now there's a note in your file that says you misled an investigation.
Yes.
And after this, you lost your taste for being on the river.
Yes. I think after that incident, I was just fed up with being taken advantage of by authority. I wanted to be my own boss.
Now, I'd like to discuss the use of autopilot in today's case. Autopilot isn't perfect.
No, of course not. No technology is perfect.
It should not be used in, say, heavy boating traffic.
Right. There are definitely situations
in a sharp meandering of the navigable waterway, such as an Oxbow.
Yes, precisely.
The defendant was navigating heavy boating traffic on May 4th.
Yes, around the Oxbow Turn, which is when she turned off autopilot.
The Evansville bend is an Oxbow.
Yes.
Under these conditions, autopilot can become overwhelmed and fail.
Yes, it's certainly a possibility.
And a failure of autopilot can cause a barge to go off course.
Hypothetically, that is certainly possible.
Now, you're aware that the defendant relied on autopilot at the beginning of her trip.
Yes, for the first stretch of the trip she did, and then she turned it off around the Oxbow Turn.
And you know that autopilot can make a significant enough mistake to cause a barge to leave the commercial channels.
It's certainly possible.
And you know that the defendant wasn't watching the water when she had the autopilot on at the beginning of her trip.
I would disagree with that.
The defendant went into the engine room while she had the autopilot on, didn't she?
Oh, for the beginning of the trip, for a brief time, she did leave the wheelhouse, which is perfectly acceptable.
So she wasn't watching the water?
For a brief period at the beginning of the trip, she had left the wheelhouse.
And you know that autopilot can make a significant enough mistake to cause a boat to leave the commercial channel.
Objection, asked and answered.
Overruled.
Yes, it's possible.
And a barge outside of the commercial channel can be catastrophic.
For sure, yes.
Ms. Storm, you believe that there may be some things that could have prevented this tragedy.
Of course. I mean, in hindsight, any tragedy can be predicted. I mean, if Mr. Hunter hadn't taken his boat out that day, he might still be alive today.
Or another way the tragedy may have been prevented is if the defendant had a more modern autopilot system.
Well, I'd like to address something you've implied with that question. I want to make very clear, we don't know if the MV Susan K. Roberts had any impact on what happened to the small fishing boat.
Ms. Storm, this is a yes or no question. If the defendant had a more modern autopilot system, you believe that this tragedy may have been prevented.
I think it's possible, but certainly not conclusive. And personally, I don't feel qualified to testify on that.
It's your testimony today that if the defendant had a more modern autopilot system, this tragedy may have been prevented, isn't it?
I think it's certainly possible, but again, we don't know if the MV Susan K. Roberts was involved in the incident at all.
So that's a yes.
It could have been.
That's a yes, isn't it, Ms. Storm? It's your testimony today that a more modern autopilot system from the defendant may have prevented this tragedy.
Yes.
You also think the defendant should have stopped when she felt the impact.
I don't necessarily think she should have stopped. I mean, every captain is different, and that's ultimately a judgment call. Since Captain Dawson did not believe that she had hit a passenger craft, and she very well may not have, she had no requirement to stop.
It's your testimony today that you don't think the defendant should have stopped?
I think it would have been a wise decision, but is definitely not anything that Captain Dawson did wrong.
Do you remember signing an affidavit in preparation for today's case?
Yes, I do.
And you were under oath when you signed this affidavit?
Yes, of course.
And you took that same oath today?
Yes.
I'm going to, and permission to show the affidavit on the screen, Your Honor.
You may.
Ms. Storm, I'm going to read from line 134 from your affidavit, and you can read along. The one concern I have is that Captain Dawson did not stop after thinking the robber struck a log. I would have stopped. Better safe than sorry. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
So you would have stopped, Ms. Storm.
Of course, every captain is different, and if you scroll to the next page, I believe I say that in my affidavit.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect examination, Ms. Newman-Toker.
No, Your Honor. We just ask that this witness be excused.
All right. Thank you for your testimony. Next witness, please.
Thank you.
At this time, the defense calls Captain Smith Dawson to the stand.
All right.
May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon, Your Honor.
Can you please state your name and age for the court?
I'm Captain Smith Dawson, and I'm 60 years old.
What do you do for a living?
Well, as I say, I'm a boat captain, and I also own and run my family's shipping business, which is the Nob Hill Barge Company.
How did your family business get started?
It was started by my grandparents, Jack and Rose Dawson, in 1936, after they emigrated from Ireland to Indiana. And from there, they passed it on to my dad, and he expanded it some and passed it on down to me.
Now, as a captain, what kind of training or education did you have to go through?
Well, I grew up on the river and on boats with my dad, and he taught me a lot of what I know today. But as well as learning from him, I was also training for my Coast Guard Master's license. And now that's a license to captain a 100-ton vessel. And for that, I needed almost a year's worth of experience on a boat and to take and pass a variety of tests. And I passed with flying colours, and I've recertified all those requirements every few years for the last 40 or so years.
Do you like your job?
I do. I like that. For me, at least, business is about family. I get to have my employees over for Sunday dinners and make sure that they're being taken care of. And I get to invest in my community. So, for example, I'm a sponsor of our baseball team.
Now, I want to fast forward to 2018. What was going on with your company then?
That was the year that I met Jordan Bennett, and Mr. Bennett is an investor, and we decided to go into business together. So he came up May 3rd and 4th of 2019 to get started on that.
I want to talk about May 4th of 2019, the day in question. What were you doing then?
Well, I woke up early and I drove down to Jordan's hotel and picked him up. And from there, I took us over to the offices and I set Jordan up with all the files and paperwork and such that he might want. And then I went to work myself.
What happened when Mr. Bennett finished looking over those books?
He finished actually a wee bit earlier than I was expecting, but around 3 p.m. or so, he poked his head into the room that I was in and he asked if I wanted to go to the club.
Did you?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Overruled.
Did you?
I obliged him and I grabbed Obi, who's our relief captain and mechanic, to come along with us.
What happened at the club?
Well, we had a spot of lunch and some drinks. Now, Jordan, he had quite a number of drinks. I just had the one because I was the replacement captain that day, and I knew that there was a chance I might have to go out onto the river.
Did you have to go out onto the river?
I did. I got the call that our scheduled captain had called in sick shortly after we arrived at the club. So I told Jordan and Obi that, and I got ready to leave.
What happened as you were getting ready to leave?
At that point, I got a notification from the Coast Guard instituting a slow no wake order. Now, I had seen the river myself that day. I did not think it was particularly high. I've certainly seen it higher in my time, and I thought that that order was a wee bit extreme. So I called engineer, who's with the Coast Guard, to talk about it.
What happened on that phone call?
I told NJ what I thought. I suggested perhaps they could have just posted some warnings instead, and she agreed that that was an option.
So now I want to move on and I want to talk about you as a captain in general. How do you captain one of your boats?
Well, our towboats are all outfitted with the standard up-to-date technology, and we check that and replace it if necessary every few years. So we have our Autopilot software, we have our lights, we have our automatic identification systems, and we're also equipped with radios. And I keep one on my lapel at all times so I can communicate with the other captains on the river. And additionally, our average speed is only about 6 miles per hour, so it is typically a pretty gentle ride.
You mentioned that you were making a shipment. Where were you going?
Well, we were scheduled to leave from Newburgh, Indiana on May 4th, and we had to get to Memphis, Tennessee by May 10th, so it was a 6-day shipment.
How did that ride go?
It was fine. It was getting dark as we left, and water was a wee bit high, and there were some logs and debris and such out. And as well, there were a good number of pleasure boaters. And this one, a speedboat, kept zipping and zipping around us, and I thought it was behaving a bit unsafely. But I've seen all that before, many times, and I know how to handle it.
How did you handle it?
Well, something that my father taught me is to use your autopilot as a tool and not as a crutch. And that's what I did. I had it on, but I was also looking out into the river, watching out for logs, for debris, for pleasure boaters, and navigating around them.
What else happened on the river that night?
Well, as we were entering the Evansville Oxbow, I got an alert from my autopilot, and it was telling me that it had an issue with its course. And what that meant was that we had drifted a wee bit, but we were still well within our commercial lane. And so at that point, I disabled the autopilot, I took the helm myself, and I corrected that issue.
What happened next?
Well, then I took us through that turn. And as I did that, I accelerated in order to get the amount of force you need to turn a boat that's as big and as heavy as our towboats are.
What happened next?
As we were coming through that turn, that speedboat that I had mentioned to use earlier came zipping around us and kicked up a bit of a wake as it did so. And at that point, I heard a thump, but I figured that the speedboat must have just pushed a log into us.
Did you stop?
No, I did not. As I say, I thought it was a log. Now, I've been hit by logs before. I know what they sound like and I know what they feel like, and you don't stop for a log.
When was the next time you stopped?
We docked at Mount Vernon to fuel, and now that's where I was approached by the Coast Guard, and they told me that there had been an accident on the river that night involving catfish and Noah, and that catfish had died. And I told them everything that I knew about the river that night, and I tried to help as much as possible.
Captain Dawson, I want to be really clear here. On the river that night, did you ever hit a boat?
No, I did not. What happened to Catfish was a tragedy, and I am truly sorry for him and for his family, but I know what a log feels like, and that's all that I hit, nothing more.
Thank you, Captain. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Dembski. Cross-examination, Ms. Hemley?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon, Ms. Dawson. My name is Shoshana Hemley, and I'm going to be asking you a couple of questions today. Now, I'd like to start off by talking about your company. You run KHBC.
I do, aye.
Nob Hill is a family.
'Tis, absolutely.
You know and care for every employee.
I do, and I hope that they care for me.
But in 2018, you felt that business was slipping.
Business goes up, business goes down. It was going down at that point.
And in 2019, Jordan Bennett of White Star Funds invested.
Aye, at that point, we had gotten back on track.
May I have the court's permission to share what has been previously marked and admitted into evidence as Exhibit 13?
You may.
Let the record reflect I am now sharing Exhibit 13 on my screen. I'd now like to talk about Section 6 of this contract. Now, Section 6 states that if KHBC were to suffer significant financial penalties from its operations, such as shipping delays, that there would be changes in management, correct?
Aye, it would be an independent board, so I would no longer have full control, but Jordan would not either.
And it also states in Section 6E that significant financial penalties are penalties in excess of $100,000.
Aye, that's correct.
And like you said, if you had one of these significant financial penalties, you would lose majority control.
I would still play a role, be able to do what I do, but I would share the control with an independent board.
And this contract was signed and dated on April 15th, 2019?
Aye, that's correct.
Let the record reflect I am no longer sharing Exhibit 13 on my screen. Now, on May 4th of 2019, you were close to hitting a financial penalty.
If you mean our contracts with the Ohio River Consortium, Jordan told me we'd been late 9 times, but I myself thought it was only 5 or 6.
But you didn't double check in your records to make sure whether or not you were going to face a financial penalty?
No, I did not. I don't think that would really impact how I behave. You make the shipment no matter the circumstances.
But if you had been late on May 4th of 2019, you would have had to be pay $150,000. Is that correct?
I believe so, but I was not too worried about that.
And your contract with White Star Funds put you in jeopardy of being taken over.
I'm not sure what you mean by being taken over. It would be an independent board.
Ms. Dawson, is it your testimony today that you don't believe that if you were late, again, your contract with White Star Funds would put you at jeopardy of being taken over?
No, I'm sorry if I've misunderstood you. It would mean that we would establish an independent board, but I'm not sure what you're referring to when you say being taken over.
Now, let the record, now you are aware you prepared an affidavit in preparation for today, correct?
I did.
And you would recognize this affidavit?
I would.
It was prepared under oath?
It was, yes.
The same oath you are under today?
That's correct.
May I have the court's permission to share the affidavit on the screen?
You may.
I would now like to draw your attention to line 86 of this affidavit. If I could just, there we go. Now, please read along while I read out loud. Someone told me later that our contract with White Star would have put the business in jeopardy of being taken over. Is that correct?
Objection. Hearsay.
Well, overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, is that correct, Ms. Dawson?
That's correct. As I say, I'm sure the contract opened up possibilities, but what would have happened if we were late was there would be an independent board.
So you knew that on May 4th, you had to keep the boat on schedule?
I did, but I was not too worried about it.
I'd like to go further in depth about May 4th. Now, you were not anticipating captaining that day.
No, I was the replacement captain and our scheduled captain was sick.
You were in such a rush that you forgot your reading glasses at home.
Oh, I did do that, but I called Obi to come along and have him do all my safety inspections for me.
Because you didn't have your reading glasses, you weren't able to read and fill out the vessel safety checklist.
That's correct. I didn't do that.
Now, things were also running slow with the dams and locks.
Aye, they were, but I reassured myself that any time we lost, we could make up sometime in the next 5 days.
Now, for much of the trip, you had autopilot running.
I did. That's correct.
Even though you know autopilot can glitch.
It can, but ours is a system which alerts you as soon as it has had any issues, so you can take over and correct that.
Because autopilot can help a captain focus on other things.
Aye, and that's exactly what I did that night. I was watching out for logs and boaters in the river.
And as you approached Evansville, a lot was going through your mind.
That's true. The Oxbow is a difficult turn, and I don't like to do it at night if I can avoid it, but I've done it before and I can handle it.
You were running late and you didn't want to incur a penalty.
Oh, aye, it's good to be on schedule, and I did not want that penalty, but I was not worried about it. I knew that we could make up any lost time in the next 5 days, sometime before May 10th.
You didn't want to incur that penalty, and you were thinking about that as you approached Evansville.
It was on my mind a wee bit, but I reassured myself that we would make up any lost time as we were getting into Tennessee, May 8th, May 9th, days later.
Looking out for personal watercraft took a lot of your attention.
Aye, it always does. It's good to be careful.
Adding to it all, an alarm went off signaling something was wrong with the autopilot's course correction.
Right, so we had drifted a wee bit, and at that point I took over and I corrected that.
But vessels the size of the Roberts can't correct their course immediately.
Do you mean the autopilot or me?
You, Miss Dawson.
No, I corrected that pretty quickly.
Well, it is correct that the larger the drift path and the stronger the current, the larger the push it takes to change course.
Well, that's absolutely right, but our autopilot is set up so that you get an alert as soon as it moves off its path, even just a wee bit. So we had not drifted very far, and I was able to correct that pretty quickly.
Now, you didn't stop till you reached Mount Vernon.
That's correct.
You feel horrible about your role in what happened.
I mean, 'twas a tragedy, and I'm sorry about it.
You hadn't thought it was a big deal when it happened.
Objection. Question calls for hearsay. May I be heard?
You may.
I believe what opposing counsel is referring to is when the Mount Vernon police told Captain Dawson she was involved in a crash. The only reason Captain Dawson ever thought she was involved is because the Mount Vernon police told her so. Therefore, it's hearsay.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
I'm simply referencing when Miss Dawson felt a collision where she had referenced earlier on direct, thinking that it was a log.
Rephrase your question, Ms. Henley.
Thank you.
Now, Miss Dawson, when you felt a collision, you hadn't thought it was a big deal when it happened.
No, 'twas just a log.
You don't know how the boat got there without you seeing it.
No, I didn't see the fishing boat, and I don't know where it was, but I know that all I hit was a log.
But like you said, a lot was going through your mind that day.
I was thinking about how dark it was and my schedule, sure.
Your business was on the line.
I wouldn't say that, but I was thinking about my contract with Jordan, if that's what you mean.
So you went full speed ahead.
No, I obeyed the slow no wake order and I accelerated as was necessary.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Dembski, redirect exam?
No redirect, Your Honor. We just asked that my witness be allowed to step down.
All right. Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Dawson. Next witness, please.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Mr. O.B. Good to the stand.
All right.
May I proceed?
You may.
Good evening.
Good evening, and good evening, Your Honor.
Could you please state your name and occupation for the court?
My name is Obi Good, and I'm a relief captain for the Nob Hill Barge Company.
What does a relief captain do?
So a relief captain is really a backup captain or a secondary captain. So when the main captain wants to take a break or leave the wheelhouse, I'm the one that takes over.
Did you have any other jobs before you were a relief captain?
I did. So before joining the barge company, I had a 25-year career with the Evansville Police Department Water Patrol Unit, and I was also a volunteer with the Coast Guard Auxiliary.
Did you ever work on anything with the Coast Guard or with the EPD that had to do with boating safety?
Yes. So a requirement to be a member of the police department's Water Patrol Unit is taking specialized classes in boating safety inspection, and I was also the lead investigator on a few dozen boating accidents.
Now that we know a little bit about your background, I want to draw your attention to May 4th, 2019. What were you doing that afternoon?
I just finished up a late lunch when I got a call from Captain Smith Dawson, and she's the owner of the family-run Nob Hill Barge Company. And she asked me if I could be a relief captain that night with her for an overnight shipment.
What did you say?
I said yes.
Was that your first time working with Captain Dawson?
It wasn't. Me and Captain Dawson, we have a lot of experience together on the Ohio River. We know each other well. We often have Sunday dinners most weeks.
What's she like on the river?
Captain Dawson, she's incredibly experienced. We have a running joke at the barge company that she was practically born on the river. Her dad and her grandfather, of all people, taught her how to go boating.
And that day, on May 4th, what was the river like?
The conditions of the river were not ideal. The water was a little high, and there was some floating logs and debris as well.
And did you have responsibilities on the boat besides taking over the helm if needed, like you mentioned earlier?
I did. Another part of my job is looking over all the mechanical workings of the boat, and I did do that on the night of May 4th.
How so?
I performed a 45-minute safety inspection of really everything, from the engine room to the wheelhouse and around the entire vessel, and everything was in perfect working condition.
And does that safety check have anything to do with the vessel safety check form that's been talked about in court today?
No, it doesn't. Only the captain can complete the vessel safety check form, but I did a safety check myself.
And what did your safety check cover in general?
Now, as I said, it covered really everything. I go around the entire boat from the engine room and around the decks into the wheelhouse to make sure that everything is in perfect condition.
And what does that form cover?
The form covers things ranging from the mechanical workings to our docking procedures to the autopilot.
And in court, did you hear when Mr. Bennett said that Captain Dawson left the wheelhouse?
I did.
Is that a problem?
It's not. Captain Dawson specifically left the wheelhouse and set the boat on autopilot on a relatively calm and straight part of the river. In my experience in the boating industry, captains do this on a regular basis, and there's really no rule against these kinds of practices.
You mentioned a straight and calm section. Did you have to deal with more complex sections that night?
We did. There's this one turn, it's called the Oxbow Turn, and it's a U-turn or a hairpin turn. And we had to go through the Oxbow on the night of May 4th.
Is that the same Oxbow we've been talking about in court today?
Yes, it is.
What was it like when you got there?
As I said, the conditions of the river were not ideal, but there was this speedboat that was zipping around our boat. It was going pretty fast, and it got pretty close to our ship. And I thought it was quite dangerous.
What happened as you went into that Oxbow turn?
We were approaching the Oxbow, and we had autopilot enabled, and I heard an alert over my headset. And this alert signifies that the autopilot is deviating or its pre-programmed course down the river, and that the captain should take control of the ship. So that's exactly what Captain Dawson did, and she course corrected our vessel.
What happened after Captain Dawson course corrected?
She took us around the Oxbow, and the speedboat that I mentioned was zipping by, and it was doing circles around our boat. And as it got pretty close one time, it kicked up this massive wake. And just then I heard a thump beside our boat.
Did you do anything about that thump?
Of course, you know, as a relief captain, my utmost concern is for the safety of my vessel. So over the headset, I heard that Captain Dawson thought it was a log or a piece of debris, and I found that answer pretty plausible.
So did you stop?
We didn't.
And were you all right with that decision?
I was. You know, Captain Dawson, as I said, she's an incredibly experienced captain. She's seen everything on the Ohio River, and specifically that night, she had a better vantage point of the wheelhouse than I did.
And Mr. Good, did you hear when Dr. Neer said that Captain Dawson was unsafe on May 4th?
I did.
Do you think she's right?
I don't. You know, I spent over 25 years in law enforcement, and I know how situations like this would go. You know, we all have a tendency to want to assign blame, but frankly, Captain Dawson operated the boat safely throughout the entirety of the night.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Connors. Cross-examination, Ms. Denniston?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon, Mr. Good. My name is Harper Denniston, and I'll just be asking you a few questions today. So firstly, I'd like to go over your background. You are relatively knowledgeable in boat and water safety.
I am.
You worked with the police department and specialized in water rescue, safety, and crimes related to the water.
For over 25 years.
And you now work as a mechanic and relief captain for KHPC?
I do, the one and only.
So it's safe to say that you are a good source for what should be the appropriate actions and responses to any incidents on the water.
You know, I do have a fair amount of experience on the Ohio River.
Now, you were on the boat the night of May 4th?
I was.
That night, Smith Dawson seemed uptight and anxious.
You're absolutely right. You know, she seemed a bit uptight and anxious. She seemed dialed in.
You were behind schedule.
We were a bit behind schedule, but you know, that's expected in the shipping industry. It's a time-sensitive one.
Jordan Bennett on board added an extra stress to the situation.
That's right.
That night was also dark.
It was an overnight shipment.
The water was high.
Yes, the conditions of the river were not ideal.
And you also noticed a large amount of debris and pleasure boats in the water.
There was some logs and floating debris in the Ohio River that night.
Now, at the beginning of that trip, Smith Dawson put the boat on autopilot and everyone left the control room.
Well, when I got on board, she set the boat on autopilot and left the wheelhouse. And remember, it was a calm and straight part of the river. And she did this for only a few minutes to help me begin my safety inspection.
And this is something that's not normally recommended for a captain to do.
You're right, it's not recommended, but you know, in my experience in the boating industry, people do this on a regular basis, and there's really no rule against this.
And so after that, you moved to the back deck, correct?
I did.
But you were able to hear what was happening through your headset.
That's correct, I was wearing a headset.
And through your headset, you were able to hear an alarm alerting you and Dawson that the boat required a course correction.
There was an alert that I heard over my headset. And, you know, this alert signifies that the autopilot is going off course and Dawson course corrected.
And you heard Dawson correct this course mistake through using sight to navigate, correct?
Right. You know, as the autopilot was unable to course correct itself, Captain Dawson had to do it herself.
In your opinion, this would have been safer using computers or at least better lighting.
Well, you know, to course correct, if the computers are failing, Captain Dawson has to do it herself.
So to be clear, Smith used neither computers or better lighting.
Sorry?
Smith didn't have better computers or lighting to make that situation safer.
I'm a bit confused what situation you're referring to.
correcting the course using sight to navigate.
You know, as I said, if the computers are failing, Smith has to do it herself.
Right. Now, it was around then that you heard two noises, one from the wake of a speedboat and the second as your boat made contact with something.
You're right. As we were going around the Oxbow, the speedboat was speeding by and it kicked up a wake, and I heard a thump beside my boat.
You felt Smith rev the engine.
That's right. You know, revving the engines might seem a little counterintuitive, but we actually have to, you know, we have a drift path around the turn. We have to apply force in an opposite direction to turn our 1,000-foot barge.
But still, you were concerned.
I was a little concerned by that noise.
You had noticed a lot of beer cans in the water.
That's right. I didn't really know where those beer cans had come from.
So you went to speak to Smith Dawson?
Over the headset, I heard that Smith Dawson thought it was a log or piece of debris, and I found that answer plausible.
And Smith Dawson assured you everything was fine.
That's right. She thought it was a log or a piece of debris, and I thought that was a pretty plausible answer.
So to summarize, despite the dangerous conditions for boating, Smith Dawson put the boat on autopilot and left the control room.
She did do that for a brief period of time, as I said, to help me begin my safety inspection on a calm and straight part of the river.
She also corrected this using sight?
She did. As the computers were failing, that was really the only option.
And she also continued after the impact.
Sorry?
She also continued after you felt the impact.
She did. She took the Oxbow by sight.
And none of these are choices that you would have made.
You know, me personally, I do have a fair amount of experience on the Ohio River, but frankly, I don't have as much experience as Captain Dawson does. So while I might have taken the boat using computer assistance, Smith Dawson has over 40 years piloting boats, and for her, it's absolutely okay to do it by sight.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Connors, redirect.
No redirect, Your Honor. At this time, the defense rests.
All right. Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Good, you may step down. All right. The evidence has been presented. Are the parties ready for closing arguments?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. On behalf of the prosecution, Ms. Shoshana Henley.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Your Honor, opposing counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, may it please the court. Full speed ahead. This is what was going through Smith Dawson's mind on May 4th of 2019. Smith Dawson, the CEO of Nob Hill Barge Company, knew that her business was in troubled waters. And so when she realized that she could lose her company to an out-of-state investor, she knew she had to do what it takes to keep her company afloat. Her business was on the line, so she had to get to her destination on time, even if it meant operating her business recklessly. Now, the state bears a burden of proof in the two charges we have brought against the defendant today. And we have established that beyond a reasonable doubt, Ms. Dawson committed reckless homicide and left the scene of the accident. A person commits reckless homicide when they recklessly kill another human being. A person engages in reckless conduct when they engage in the conduct with a plain, conscious, and unjustifiable disregard of harm, and that it is a substantial deviation from acceptable standards of conduct. Now, on May 4th of 2019, Smith Dawson was in fear of losing her company. If she had one more late shipment, KHBC would be fined $150,000. But as you heard here today, Nob Hill is a family. Smith Dawson cares for her employees, so this is why she knew she had to get to her destination on time, not just for herself, but for all of those who relied on her for their livelihoods. Now, on May 4th, one thing was going through Smith Dawson's mind: get the MV Susan Roberts downriver as quickly as possible. To reach this goal, it meant that she ignored the slow no wake, failed to complete the vessel safety checklist, and left her reading glasses at home, making it difficult to read signs and captain her ship. Most importantly, she relied on autopilot to navigate troubled waters. Now, as the defendant reached the Evansville Oxbow, an alarm started ringing, signaling that something was wrong with the autopilot's course correction. But rather than slow down and risk missing her shipment, Smith Dawson turned off the alarm, disengaged autopilot, and continued full speed ahead through the Oxbow. But it was too late. The autopilot's out-of-date system had failed and had taken the ship off of its scheduled charted path out of the commercial channel and into the area reserved for pleasure boaters. Unfortunately, one such pleasure boater was occupying the area that night, Jamie Hunter. And as the towboat sped out of control, it collided with Jamie Hunter's fishing boat, resulting in his death. Now, on May 4th, Smith Dawson was reckless. His insistence to continue full speed ahead and her reliance on autopilot was a plain, conscious, and unjustifiable disregard of harm. Smith Dawson's reckless operation of the Roberts resulted in the death of Jamie Hunter. Now, Smith Dawson is also guilty of count 2 in this case, leaving the scene of the accident. Both Obie Good and Jordan Bennett testified to feeling the collision, but as you heard, Smith refused to take down the rescue boat and instead continued full speed ahead, knowing fully well that there was a high probability that she had collided with another boat and was required by law to stop as close to the scene of the accident as possible. Now, we have proven that Smith Dawson operated her vessel recklessly, resulting in the death of Jamie Hunter. The evidence here has shown today that she committed reckless homicide and left the scene of the accident. We ask that you apply the law and the facts to this case and return the only just and proper verdict of guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hemley. On behalf of Smith Dawson, Ms. Aiden Connors.
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed?
You may.
May it please the court, counsel, and members of the jury. Dr. N.J. Neer said the 3 most important things in court today. She told you that there was a very likely possibility Captain Dawson was going fast. She told you that she had no evidence to say with certainty her expert opinion, and she told you she thought her only forensic evidence was an odd coincidence. Members of the jury, possibilities, uncertainty, and coincidences just aren't good enough. The state has based their entire case on those uncertainties, on those guesses. Guesses just aren't good enough. Now, they've charged Captain Dawson with 2 things: reckless homicide and leaving the scene. They have the burden of proof in today's case, which means they must prove each element of each charge beyond a reasonable doubt. That means that if you still have questions, and you will, by the time my opposing counsel sits back down today, you may not find her guilty. Let's start by looking at reckless homicide. Because in order to convict Captain Dawson of reckless homicide, the state has to show you that she caused Mr. Hunter's death and that she did so recklessly. We know Captain Dawson didn't cause Mr. Hunter's death because that night, the sun was down. Ms. Hitter didn't see what happened. Mr. Bennett told you himself he can't say for sure what happened. Mr. Good didn't see what happened. But every single eyewitness there that night did see something else: a speedboat, a third boat on the river going faster than everyone else. A third boat Dr. Neer didn't take into account in her conclusion. She said it herself best. Lives are at stake when there's a wake. There were 2 wakes at the scene of the crime, and she didn't bother to take the second one into account. In order to convict Captain Dawson of recklessness, in order to show you she was reckless, the state must show that she plainly and consciously disregarded risk of harm, and that she substantially deviated from acceptable standards of conduct. Members of the jury, the state told you that Captain Dawson was worried about not making her shipment on time. That's a shipment that was due on May 10th. They're telling you that Captain Dawson plainly and consciously disregarded a risk of harm so she could shave 30 minutes off her travel time for a shipment due 6 days later? That's not reasonable. That's the state's attempt to blame someone for a tragedy. And she didn't substantially deviate from acceptable standards of conduct either. They tried to tell you she was going full speed ahead. They told you in opening that they were going to show you in court she didn't comply with the slow no wake order. Where was that testimony? Captain Dawson told you herself that she was going as slow as possible to maintain steerage. She told you that she took over autopilot when she needed to, the same thing you heard from Miss Storm and Mr. Good. You told her she was looking out for logs and debris. She's been safe for 40 years. She was safe that night too. Let's turn to leaving the scene. It's not disputed that Captain Dawson physically left the scene. So the only question is whether or not she did so knowing there was a high probability that she left knowing she had injured another human being or a boat. The state also has to show you that she actually did injure Mr. Hunter, which they failed to do. But members of the jury, on May 4th, Captain Dawson said multiple times that she thought she hit a log and she wasn't concerned. She said today in court multiple times that she thought she hit a log and she wasn't concerned. The state can't even show you there was a high probability that she'd injured someone on May 4th. They can't even show you today that she was wrong. They're trying to send her to prison for homicide, and their entire story is based on guesses. Guesses just aren't good enough. And they certainly don't prove guilt. Find her not guilty on all counts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Connors. Ms. Hemley, does the state have rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Guesses aren't good enough. But the state isn't the one making guesses here today. It isn't a guess that Smith Dawson was risking a financial penalty if she ran late. It isn't a guess that Smith Dawson made the choice to use autopilot on debris-filled waters. And it isn't a guess that Smith Dawson made the choice to leave the wheelhouse. It is Smith Dawson who guessed that the collision was just a log, despite evidence of beer cans and Obie Good telling her otherwise. It is Smith Dawson's guess that her disregard of safety was justifiable because she had to make her destination on time. And it is Smith Dawson who guessed she could operate autopilot without it glitching. But we are not asking you to make guesses here today. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are simply asking you to return the only just and proper verdict: guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hemley. Case will now be submitted to the jury. Well, I want to thank both teams for a excellent and obviously very well prepared presentations. We're all very proud of you. I need to ask each team if they believe that a substantial rules violation has occurred during the trial. For the state?
Your Honor, the state does not have any substantial rule violations to bring up.
All right. Defense?
Nothing from the defense, Your Honor.
All right. I'm going to allow time now for the judges to enter their scores and submit their ballots. And during this time, while the scoring judges are submitting their ballots, I would ask each team to confer regarding their selection of the Star Award Best Attorney and the Star Award Best Witness for the other team. And once you do that and we finish up, then we will come back. The scoring judges will introduce themselves, and if they have any comment they wish to make, they can do so at that time. And then we will have the announcement for the Star Award Best Attorney and the Star Award Best Witness. So if you would now retire to confer among yourselves regarding those selections, and then I would ask the scoring judges to fill out their score sheets and submit them. We'll come back. Scott, are we going off for a bit to score now? Or are we staying on the screen?
I think we defer to Tim. I think we stay on the screen, if I'm not mistaken.
Tim, oh, I'm sorry, Tim,
Yeah,
I didn't see you.
Nope, I just came back on here. Actually, we're doing a double check, but actually I think in this championship trial that we don't typically do the star awards for that. So we're just kind of gonna wait, see as your scores come in. But in that meantime, if you, our judging panel, would like to at least introduce themselves, say your name, what office you're from, and just kind of do that brief introduction and just do a quick congratulations to the students, that would be great.
Okay, all right, we can do that. Who wants to start off? Bev Korn, why don't you start off? We can't hear you, Bev.
Oh, microphone.
Technology. I hate technology. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Beverly Korn. It's been an absolute pleasure and delight being with you this afternoon. And I got to tell you, I find you inspiring. And so as I'm fading out of my career, I feel good knowing y'all are coming back and will do just fine for us. Thank you for your time and your energy.
All right, Chief Justice Shepard.
You bet. Thanks for everything you did, both today and before, and bravo. I hope some of you decide to become lawyers and judges. And if you decide you don't want to be a lawyer or a judge in your state, I will represent you in front of Justice David and his colleagues for admission to the Indiana Bar. So we'll look forward to success in either direction. Thanks for being part of this.
Justice David.
Extremely well done. All of you are to be congratulated. And if you don't go to law school, some of you should go to acting school. But we hope you all go to law school. I'm Steve David. I'm one of the justices on the Indiana Supreme Court, and along with Judge Young, co-chair, members of the Indiana Bar Foundation. We're sorry you're not actually here, but we're very, very, very proud of you. Well done.
Thank you. Judge May?
Thank you. My name is Melissa May. I am a judge on the Indiana Court of Appeals. You guys were all awesome. I am so proud of everybody. It was just wonderful sitting here and listening and watching your minds work as you face the questions and the different answers that you got. I practiced law in Evansville for 14 years before I was appointed to the court. And I too am sorry that you cannot be in Evansville right now, so we could show you some of the hospitality that that town actually has. Congratulations, you can enjoy your day. You all did a wonderful job.
Judge Sweeney.
Well, that was a personal privilege for me to see and score that. I am a proud colleague of Judge Young, and I'd like to congratulate him as well as the Indiana Bar Foundation and the National put this on in tough circumstances, having a virtual production here, which has really been magnificent. But congratulations to you all. Putting national in front of anything, whether that be champion, runner-up, or participant, is a pretty special thing. And so, like the rest of the folks here, I was inspired by you. I hope you stop by here either in court as a lawyer, or if you're in Indianapolis, just stop by and visit. That's where our court is here. And again, bravo to you. Thank you.
I see Jay Yelton there. Jay?
Yes, thank you very much. 35 years of practicing, 5 in Chicago, 30 in Michigan, and I really hope to see a lot of you next year in my hometown of Kalamazoo, Michigan, for the next championship. So congrats again.
Thank you. Jordan Tinsley.
Thank you, Judge.
I'm Jordan Tinsley. I'm the chair of the Arkansas Mock Trial Foundation, and it's our pleasure to host the championship in 2 years. And so I don't know what year any of you are, but if you're young enough, maybe you'll get to come to Little Rock and see us here. And I just echo all of the comments that were made. I mean, this was absolutely a privilege and an honor to watch a round of this quality, and the hard work and talent that all of you exhibited is just evident. And all of you have exceedingly bright futures. Thank you.
Barrett Moore?
I also am a partner at a law firm in Arkansas and a previous chair of the mock trial committee here. Great job to both teams. It was a privilege judging you today and watching your presentation. You put in a lot of work and it was evident.
Thank you. And Kamisha, and I can't see your last name, but if you'd introduce yourself. Yeah, there we go. Kamisha Gant.
Hi, my name is Kamisha Gant, and I'm a circuit court judge in the Sixth Circuit Court, which is in Oakland County, Michigan. And so I want to congratulate both teams for a job well done. I thought both teams were professional, thorough, and there were many times during this competition that I even forgot that you were students, and you could have very well have been in my courtroom trying a case before me. So I hope many of you continue on in future endeavors and maybe consider a career in law, and good luck in this competition. And I thought you did a fabulous job, and I'm very proud.
Then I see another Jay Yelton. Is there Jay Yelton? Are you two of them?
No, not two. Sorry.
Okay, all right. You're on there twice. All right. Also, Scott Barnhart.
Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Barnhart. I'm an attorney at the Indiana Attorney General's Office. I serve as Chief Counsel and Director of the Consumer Protection Division. Having had the opportunity to help write this case, I am inspired by how you brought it to life. So I very much appreciate all your efforts. It's fantastic to see. It's very well done. So nice job.
And then Anthony, and I can't see your last name either. Anthony McMullen? Okay.
Yes, yes, Your Honor. Outstanding job to everyone. As someone who reviewed the case, it's amazing to see the witnesses bring to life the characters, and you became the characters in this case, and that was absolutely outstanding. To the attorneys, I will echo everything that they have said. Regardless of whether you're going to be future members of this profession or not, you're going to be certainly a testament to your schools and certainly a testament to your communities as well. And as for who I am the current chair of the mock trial committee in Arkansas, as well as an associate professor of business law at the University of Central Arkansas. And we welcome your representation in Little Rock in 2 years. But as for this round, this is definitely what I expected to see. This went above expectations for what I expected to see in the championship round, and all of you ought to be proud. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other scoring judges maybe I've overlooked? Okay, well, I want to thank you, both teams, participants. Excellent presentation, obviously very well prepared. I've been a judge for a little over 31 years now, and I've seen lawyers who come into the courtroom who are very well prepared and some who are not so well prepared. And the judges on the scoring panel here can, I'm sure they can attest that you can tell when someone is prepared and someone's not. And it was obvious to me, and I'm sure to everyone else involved, that you all worked very hard and were very well prepared. And when you're well prepared, you can see that it's a little easier to make your presentation because you've got confidence in yourself, and that was obvious as well. If you have an interest in going to law school, I would encourage it. It's an absolutely wonderful career, and you all would make wonderful lawyers. If you're not going to law school, I wish you the best in whatever career that you determine. You're preparing yourself well. And as Paul indicated earlier on, He participated in a mock trial championship when he was in high school, and he remembers it to this day. And I'm sure that you will remember this experience for the rest of your lives as well. So congratulations to all of you, and I just wish you were here in Evansville. The Oxbow is about 4 blocks down the street from me right now. And I'm going to go down there and check it out a little later on to see if anything's going on down there, whether there's some speedboats or barges getting out of line. So, but in any event, congratulations to all of you. And on behalf of the entire team here, I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Congratulations again. We had a great trial, so thank you much. Join in for the award ceremony, 8 p.m. Eastern. Start a little early. We'll have a slideshow of pictures beforehand. So thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you to everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great
Great job, guys. Nice pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're on